I'm Sherry Kendall, and welcome to Hometown Salutes. Today, my veteran is John Powsey. Welcome, John.
Well, thank you.
I appreciate you coming here today. I know you're on vacation, so I
Yeah.
appreciate you stopping into the studio.
I don't mind at all.
So let's get started. Did you enlist into the service? Or
I did.
You enlisted?
I did. My brother was in the Marine Corps. He was a few years older than I was.
Okay.
But I knew sooner or later I was going to be drafted. So I went and talked to the Marine Corps recruiter. And he offered me 2 years or 4 years. And 4 years was aviation guarantee. I said, sign me up for 4 years because, that sounded really good. You know what that meant? It meant that I got to go to Vietnam and shoot a machine gun out of a helicopter. That was my aviation guarantee. But anyway, it's a little more than that, but okay, yeah.
So was your family, were they supportive? Were your parents supportive about that?
They were sad to see me go, but at the same time that they were proud. They were supportive.
Did you go right after high school?
No, I had some college.
Okay.
Yeah, I actually turned 20 when I went into boot camp.
All right. So you were older.
A little bit older
decided.
than most. Yeah, most of them are 18. It's like that.
So you join the Marines, and you go where to boot camp?
I went at San Diego Marine Corps boot camp.
And what happens there?
Well, it was an interesting time because at that time they needed a lot of people in Vietnam, a lot of Marines in Vietnam. So they shortened it from 16 weeks to 8 weeks. I said, man, I hit that thing just right. So I went through 8 weeks, and a lot of it was just classroom stuff until I got to the advanced infantry training. Then that's where you crawl under the machine gun fire and everything, and they teach all kinds of stuff there. But it had been raining like crazy, and the place where you crawl under the machine gun fire was about that deep of water. So I didn't have to do that, which was fine with me.
Oh, gosh.
I had some funny things happen, though.
All right, let's go.
Oh, God, yes.
Like what?
Well, man, we went to Camp Pendleton after San Diego. And while we was there, one night they got everybody out, the DIs, and we're sitting out there. And they had these two guys. I'm telling you, they looked like twins. But they weren't twins. They weren't related. But they're only about so tall. Okay? And they pegged them right. They named them Heckle and Jekyll. And that's from a cartoon, and they literally looked like Heckle and Jekyll. So we got them up there, and he had them stand back to back. Okay, we're all sitting there watching this, and they're standing back to back. He says, okay, when I say about face, I want you to do an about face and start calling at one another. So they're up there, and they're going, call, call, call. Oh, we are laughing. I'm telling you, it was tears in my eyes. It was so funny. So then he got the next guy to come up. He said, you were running a race today, weren't you? And he said, yes, I was. He says, were you winning? He says, yes, I was. He says, what happened? He says, well, I was running and running and running, and I turned around and I looked behind me over my shoulder to see where the other guy was. Then I turned around again, and it was a cliff. He says, what'd you say next? He said, I said, ah! So that was a little bit of experience through that. Even though boot camp in itself was not funny, afterwards you think of the funny things that happened.
Right. So boot camp was shortened, and then they sent you right on over?
No, I had that aviation guarantee. So they sent me to jet engine school to work on jet engines.
Okay. So how long was that?
Well, off and on. It was over about a year and a half, off and on. And then I was working there with the squadron in the hangar. And we were working on the T-58 jet engines. And actually, me and another fellow wrote the book on how to tear them all down and put them back together again, which was pretty incredible.
Yeah.
So anyway, then later on, I was working on the T-64 engines, which was the same engines that was on the CH-53 helicopters that I ended up flying on and working on over in Vietnam.
Okay.
So anyway, after about 2.5 years, and that's when I volunteered to go to Vietnam. 2 other guys volunteered, and I said, well, a real good friend of mine, his wife was about to have a baby. And I said, I'll take his place. And I did, so I come home, told my wife, I says, I'm going to Vietnam. She says, oh, great. But anyway.
So you were married at the time that you enlisted?
Married and had JR, our son, at that time.
Okay.
Yeah, he was about 2. And anyway, flew off to Vietnam, spent 13 months there, met my wife and my son and my mother. She came over with them. Let's see, I left in, what, October, and I met them, I think, must have been February, and in Hawaii. I had 5 days there. Then I went back to Vietnam, but before I had that time where I met them, the Tet Offensive had started.
Oh.
In 1968, and I was flying up on the helicopter as a door gunner, and we were resupplying troops in Khe Sanh, which is a big deal going on at that time because of the Tet Offensive, and they were surrounded by 20,000 Viet Cong. 6,000 Marines surrounded by 20,000. All their supply routes had been cut off, so the only supply route they had was helicopters, and sometimes a C-130 would come in and drop off supplies. But we carried in, I don't know how many times I flew into Khe Sanh with supplies for those guys up there. And there was a lot of my buddies that were killed doing just exactly what I was doing. They got shot down or shot and crashed or whatever. I was just blessed that I made it out of there several times. And those guys that were there, they went through pure hell. Pure hell. It was unbelievable. Yeah.
Well, in my notes here, like after boot camp, the NBC school, there was a gas chamber.
Yeah, I went
talk
through.
about
I
that.
volunteered. They told us never volunteer, right?
So
I
you did.
But I did. Nuclear, biological, and chemical warfare. And I says, "Ooh, that sounds good." When I was in boot camp, we had to go through the gas chamber. And I said, "Man, enough of that stuff." Well, I ended up volunteering. I went through it 3 more times. And then you had to run through this other gas called a blood gas, and you told not to breathe. And you run through it, it would still take your breath. And then they put this little dot of stuff on that did a little bit of something on your skin. It was called mustard gas. And I thought, I don't want to do that again either. But there was all kinds of chemicals that had been used in warfare.
And
I
you
went through
pretty much
that.
experienced all of
I
them
experienced too much.
by volunteering.
Yes, yes.
Wow. That's crazy. So let's talk about, did anything special happen on New Year's Eve one year?
Yes.
You're in Vietnam, right?
I'm in Vietnam, New Year's Eve, 1967, January 31st. And the Army had a base of Hueys across the runway. Okay? Well, some reason or another, the Marines decided they need to shoot at the Army. So they were shooting up over their heads and shooting across the runway. And we got up on the roof of the hut that I was in.
Yeah.
And it happened to be right next to a loudspeaker. Okay? We didn't think anything about it. We're up on the roof. We're seeing all these tracer rounds flying all over the place. Crazy place to be to start with. Then all of a sudden, someone come over the speaker and says, "Cease fire in Mag 16 area." And right after that, somebody said, "Shoot that speaker." And we looked at one another and said, "Ah!" So we come tumbling off the roof, and that speaker
all
was blown to bits.
Oh my goodness.
So that was my experience of New Year's Eve in Vietnam.
Oh, wow. That's a good New Year's Eve. One you'll never forget.
I still remember it.
Yeah. So your time over there, I mean, is there any, did you have any entertainment?
Oh yeah, there was USO shows come through. We did have good entertainment. And one of the things with the USO show, this one couple, I think they were there probably 3 or 4 different times the time I was there. And they always ended it with "You'll Never Walk Alone." And, I just kind of got close to the Lord over there. We would do that, with all the stuff going on.
Sure.
But yeah, the entertainment was great. The things that were going on the base and all was pretty cool. The base I was on was considered an in-country R&R. For the grunts that were out in the field, they would come to our base to kind of take it easy. And we were right on the South China Sea, so there was a beach, the whole thing, right? It didn't mean we didn't get hit or try to be overrun. It's just they didn't have as much going on there as the guys out in the field did. They went through pure hell.
Yeah.
So.
Did you meet anybody famous?
I met Bob Hope.
Who?
Yeah. Raquel Welch.
Well, let's tell me about that.
Well, I ended up being chosen to go, one of the guys from the squadron, to go over to the Bob Hope show in Da Nang. And I was sitting back there maybe 10, 12 rows from the front, just off to the right a little bit. I was watching the show and all. And it was a great show. Bob Hope was tremendous, just tremendous guy. And I thought, man, there's a lot of people, a lot of Marines, some Army. They were all there. There must have been 100,000 people. It was all back up in the mountains and everywhere around it, watching this. I thought, in order to get back to the bus that I came over on, I might want to get a head start. So I just started climbing over the chairs and climbing over another row of chairs and another row of chairs, another row. And finally somebody said, son, can I help you? I turned around and looked. It was a full-blood colonel. I'm going through all this top brass, right?
Yeah.
I said, no, I'm okay. And I took another step and I went over and I was in the front row, right where I wanted to be, except I turned and looked on my left. There was the commanding general of I Corps. I looked on my right. It was the South Korean commanding general of I Corps.
Oh, no.
I thought, oh, what have I done? And Barbara McNair is singing Silent Night. And she saved my life, I'm telling you. And as soon as she got done singing, I took off running, because if I didn't get out, I was in deep trouble. So I was running, and all of a sudden they put out this rope, and I kind of run up against it. What's this all about? And they had two ropes, and all of a sudden here come Bob Hope off the stage, and they had made a way for him to get off. And so I got to shake hands with Bob Hope, met him and shook hands with him. And then Raquel Welch came down.
Oh, wow.
Well, that was incredible. I got up close and personal with her because the ropes were about this far apart when Bob Hope come.
Yeah.
But when Raquel Welch come, they were about this far apart. So she's like right there. But it was quite an experience.
Yeah, that's funny. So you want to talk about the attack on the Da Nang and Puff returning fire? Can we talk about that?
Puff the Magic Dragon. That's the C-130 that had the big machine guns in it that fired several thousand rounds a minute. It was incredible. And we saw that operating several nights during Tet Offensive in January. And the one night was really bad out there. Viet Cong were attacking Da Nang, which is about 5 miles northwest of us. And the next morning I had a hop going out in flight, and we flew over the Da Nang River. And there was VC bodies floating all over the river, up on the banks. I've never seen anything like it. There was hundreds of them, all dead. Some of them had spears, 8-foot spears. That was their weapon. I thought, then I understood. They got them all hopped up on drugs and stuff and just sent them out there. It was crazy. Yeah.
Wow. That's a sight to see, I'm sure. Something you'll never forget.
I ended up flying way over 60 combat missions. There I won the Air Medal. I won my Marine Corps wings with stars, with the 3 silver stars. And
goodness gracious.
The last flight of my career over there, we flew four flights south of the base where we're at, about 50 miles south. And they were about to be overrun, or expected to be overrun. And so we were flying more Marines in, and made 4 trips in, bringing in supplying the Marines in to fortify the base. Well, that was an interesting time. Flying in was no problem. It was calm. It was daylight. We dropped them off. They got off, and we flew back out. No problem. Except when we lifted off, we could see the VC coming across the field. And they were up there was a big mountain, it was bigger than a hill, but they were up in there too. And so I thought, well, it's going to get interesting there. And we left and went and picked up another group of Marines, come back. And that time, it's dark already, okay? And I'm seeing tracer rounds flying through that base. I'm seeing explosions going on. It was a regular John Wayne movie. I'm serious. I've never experienced anything like that or saw anything like it before or since. But I got a sense what the grunts went through out there, and I was glad I was lifting off instead of staying. But we dropped off the Marines, lifted off. And, of course, at night, you can't have any lights on the helicopter because then the VC will see where you're at. So we were flying without lights, and so was the other aircraft. I mean, there was 53s, there were CH-46s, there was Hueys, and there were the little Piper Cub type, a little fixed-wing aircraft, a little spotter plane. They're all up in the air. Well, we're flying along, and thank God we're going the same direction. And about 150 feet out, right in front of me, this Huey fires these rockets into the mountainside. I didn't even know he was there. Nobody knew he was there. And just lit up the whole thing. I thought, well, that was interesting. So then when we was flying out after our second time, and we saw all this going on in the air and the firing and all, then we started taking fire ourselves. I saw the helicopter up in front of us. That was, the tracer rounds were coming up, and I thought, well, we're next. And about that time, here was a big white flash, and you know what you're getting shot at. If you're looking down the barrel, it's a big white flash. And so you had to ask permission before you could return fire. You couldn't just shoot. You had to ask permission. So I asked the captain for permission, who was piloting. I said, sir, we're taking fire at 11 o'clock. Request permission to return fire. And he says, shoot that son of a bitch. And you know, that's exactly what I did. I shot 150 caliber rounds right down the barrel, and we never had a problem again. So, but that's what happened there. There were so many things that happened in Vietnam that some of it I want to forget and keep it forgotten.
Right.
But there was some funny times too, and I got to tell you a couple of them.
Okay.
Okay. We had this wonderful Marine feller, we called him Frenchie because he's from Louisiana.
Yeah.
But we had some funny things that happened to Frenchie over there. We got bunk beds, right? Frenchie's sitting there. He'd gone down that day to the Mama San's gift shop and got him a Mama San chair. Well, that's nothing more than an aluminum fold-up chair. Okay, just like we would use here. And he's sitting down there next to his bunk bed, and he's reading the paper, or whatever it was, and he decided he's going to bed. So he crawled up and he left the Mama San chair sit there. And I said to Frenchie, Frenchie, you better get back down and move that Mama San chair, because if we get incoming tonight, you're going to jump out of that bed and you're going to go right into that Mama San chair, and it's going to close on you like a mousetrap. He said, I'm already up here. We're not going to get incoming. 2 o'clock in the morning, we got incoming. We're all out in the bunker. Everybody's saying, where's Frenchie? Frenchie's not here. Where's Frenchie? But at that time you hear this, oh, and somebody's dragging something through the sand, and here he finally he's got that Mama San chair wrapped around his legs. It's too funny. I mean, he just right into it.
Oh my gosh.
Had another time.
With Frenchie?
With Frenchie.
Oh, poor Frenchie.
Oh God, it was hilarious. Anyway, you got to have some levity, right?
Right.
So anyway, we get incoming. Again, they usually hit 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning when you're sound asleep. He goes running out the door. We all go to the bunker. I went out one end, and a couple of the 3 guys did the bunkers around in between the 2 huts. Frenchie, he last one out, and he goes out the front door, and he thought, well, I'll just grab a hold of the door frame and swing around and get me to the bunker quicker. Pretty soon we're in there, and he goes, where's Frenchie? What happened to Frenchie? He's not here again. You hear this, oh, and here he comes crawling in. I said, what happened to you? He says, I grabbed the door frame and I forgot to let go. He just went around like a tune.
Poor Frenchie.
So there were some funny times.
That's funny.
Not to mention the time he fell out of the bunk bed and everybody thought it was incoming, and they ran over the top of him.
Oh, he fell out, and
Yes.
because they heard that?
The first night we had bunk beds, he was right up by the door there, and
Oh, that is hysterical.
I know it.
So, I mean, everything's so tense over there. Did you really ever sleep?
Oh, yeah. It was a tense time, but at the same time, only thing we worried about was if we were going to get hit that night. Now, if it was windy, we weren't going to get hit because it was too windy and they couldn't be accurate.
So what was the weather? You were there what year? What time frame?
The winter of '67 to the fall of '68. Come back home in November, right around Thanksgiving. Thank God.
Yeah, for sure. So did you communicate with your family?
Yes, I could.
How'd you do that?
We had the, what do they call that? Where they had you could talk on the radio, on the phone, and they relay it and whatever. But anyway, I talked to my wife and my mother a few times on the phone, and that was good. So there was some communication with the family.
Right. Gosh. So when you had downtime, what did you do? Is there anything fun
Well, I
you guys
worked in
would
check
do?
crew,
Right.
okay, and you worked long hours. You're up at check crew at 8 o'clock, and you might get done there at 8 o'clock that night. So most of the time, it's just come
Want to
home and
sleep.
come back to the hut and rest and sleep. We got hit one night with rockets. And this was during the daytime, about 6 o'clock at night, actually. And I was walking to the mess hall, me and two other guys, and the rockets started falling all over the base. And we're like, where do we go? Because we're not next to our bunker. We'd kind of run circles around one another and saw this big bunker about over half a block away. And it was another Marine ahead of us. And I beat him to the bunker, just dove into the thing, because when a rocket goes off, it shakes the base. I mean, mortars are one thing, but a rocket's something else. It'll put the fear of God in you.
Yeah. I mean, I just can't even imagine.
Yeah. Yes, that's kind of what we went through. And it wasn't all the time. It was mostly when we were flying.
Yeah. So are you glad? I mean, are you glad you joined the Marines?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I love the Marine Corps. The fact my brother was in the Marines, I was in the Marines, and once a Marine, always a Marine.
Was he in about the same time as you, or
No,
was
my
there a
brother
big
was a
difference?
lot older.
He was a lot older.
Yeah, he's a lot older. He was in World War II.
Oh, he was in World War II.
Yeah. But he came back alive. He had some experiences there, too.
Yeah.
Oh, there was a time when you asked about the leisure time.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, there were sailboats available to us there because we were right on the beach on the South China Sea.
Yeah.
And so 3 other Marines and myself, we got in the sailboat and we just took off sailing. Now, I'd never sailed before, but I didn't want to miss it, so I went along with them. And we're sailing out there, and we decided that we went too far, and there's a storm coming across Vietnam out toward us.
Oh, goodness.
And so we're coming back in, trying to beat the storm, but we didn't beat it. And the wind and everything hit us, and we're holding on to the sailboat, and our backs are touching the water. It kind of keep it from going over. And that was an interesting time, but we made it back safe. But the biggest thing was, there was a lot of Marines and whatever would swim right there in the South China Sea. Of course, it's full of sharks. And coming back in from a flight one day, we're coming back in over the South China Sea, and we're flying back in over the base, and I see these 3 huge, look like torpedoes. They're gray.
Yeah.
One's about 20 foot long, the other one's about 16 foot long, the other one's about 10 foot long. It's like Papa, Mama, and baby sharks. And so we radioed in because the Marines were swimming there and stuff. And the Army on the other side of the Hueys, they would then fly out with a grenade launcher and chase the sharks away. Of course, I did join the 200-mile-an-hour club too.
What's that?
Well, that's when you're flying in a CH-53 helicopter, which is a huge helicopter, and you're flying over 200 mile an hour. And not many got to do that, but I got to do it because we picked up a general in Dong Hall and flew him to Quang Tri at treetop level at over 200 mile an hour.
At treetop level?
Uh-huh.
At 200 mile an hour?
Yeah. Yeah. He was the most unique individual I'd ever met in my life. He's a 2-star grunt Marine general. And this guy, I don't know how old he was. He was older. But he was one tough old bird and a wonderful person to meet. It was great. Probably should tell you about how I got my Purple Heart over there.
You received a Purple Heart.
I did. Nothing that I'm too thrilled about. Thank God I'm still alive.
Yeah.
But I was working on a helicopter at night, and I was up on the rotor head. There was 2 helicopters, 2 CH-53 helicopters side by side. Another Marine was working on the rotor head over here, and I was working on this one, making sure the blades and everything were the right shimmed and whatever you did. And my flashlight went out. I thought, well, shoot, I shook it. Nope. So I went back down into the hangar, got new batteries, turned it on, it worked fine. Then I come back out, got up to the top on the rotor head again. The flashlight quit working. I said, this is strange, right? So I go back down, and about halfway into the middle of the hangar, and we start getting mortars start falling all over the base. 3 of them hit between the 2 helicopters. 3 mortars, and just like that, okay? Now, if I'd been there, I'd be like the other Marine who got full of holes from the mortars as he tried to get off, and he didn't make it. I went out the back door. I took off running out the back door of the hangar where the bunker was, and as I went out through the back door, a mortar hit the corner of the hangar, and shrapnel went right through my eyebrow. You'll see there's parts of the hair missing there. And so I just, another inch or 2, and I'd be gone, but the timing was unreal. So, yeah, a little later on, I felt it, but I didn't even think about it, A little later on, the guy says, you've been wounded. I said, no. He said, yeah, you got blood all over. I said, I do. And I looked in there, just blood all down the side. So anyway, I went to sick bay and ended up getting a Purple Heart.
Oh, wow.
So
then how did you end up in Connersville?
Well, after the Marine Corps and whatever, eventually we had friends that were over in this area, and we came over, visited with them, put our kids in Baptist Temple, the Christian school at the time.
Yeah.
And I thought, we were living in Richmond, and so then we moved to Connersville, and we were here for probably, at least 5 or 6 years. And then we moved from here. And then later on, we came back again for about another 10 years. So off and on, we've lived in Connersville for about 15 years, I guess.
Okay.
And so I think we've lived in Connersville longer than any place we've ever lived. So it's kind of like a hometown.
And then your son, he does live here, right?
Oh, yes, he does. He
Yeah,
grew up here and went to school here. He was going to the Christian school, and he graduated. Well, he didn't graduate from here. We ended up going to Florida, and he ended up going to a Christian school there in Pensacola Christian and graduated from there. Then we opened up some different businesses. We had the Connersville Kitchen Center, which we sold kitchen cabinets. That was up on the north end of Grand Avenue, just before 30th Street.
Okay.
And that did real well, but then waterbeds became popular. So we got one waterbed, we put it in the Connersville Free Fair,
Yeah.
and sold about 20 of them. I thought, there's a demand for this. So then we put some water beds into the kitchen cabinet business on the floor there, took out some displays, and then that grew, and we opened up another waterbed store, then another one, and pretty soon we opened up a big waterbed store in Richmond, which we had 40 water beds on display.
Wow.
And from there we expanded to Greenville, Ohio, Portland, Indiana. We were in Columbus, Indiana. We even had a waterbed store in Harrison, Ohio, and all over the place. We're like the waterbed kings of eastern Indiana.
And it all started right here.
All started right here with one waterbed in the fair.
That is funny.
Yep.
Well, John, I want to thank you. I want to thank you for your service and your sacrifice.
You're welcome.
I appreciate you stopping in.
Hey, it's my pleasure.
and
I
doing the show
enjoy
tonight.
this.
This is awesome and
Yeah. Well,
Just
that's good.
a great
That's good.
experience. I mean, can't imagine everything that you experienced over there.
Yeah, there's a lot more, believe me. Agent Orange,
Ugh,
that's not a good thing.
no.
And I know there's a lot of guys have gone through a terrible time with their health because of Agent Orange. I
Right.
ended up with prostate cancer, and this recently with a sarcoma cancer of the neck, rare, all going back to Agent Orange.
All going back. Ugh,
We were carrying it on the C-53s.
geesh.
CH-53. So,
Well, I want to thank you. And be sure to tune in next month for another edition of Hometown Salutes.